I am your host, Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. My system has been occupied with the videos from George Galloway earlier today. Those have been released. And again, shout out to Galloway. I am... He had to spend the first 5 minutes with me just kind of gushing of having to be sitting across from him. So those are up. I even added a small segment only for the patrons, and that's going to be available to anyone that's a patron, or if you guys are a contributor, just let me know and I'll send you a link. Beyond that point, I want to get to the news. Before I get to the news, and I have several stories that I want to do, so I'm not quite sure how long I'm going to stay on each story. Each is not necessarily long in and of itself, even though, if we have a sufficient number of people here, we can have a conversation about it. But, this story kind of hits on something that I was talking about almost a year ago, because I was, a bit more cynical of the political actors in this process. And I don't necessarily look at the Republican Party as the only party that's willing to do underhanded things to get from point A to point B. That said, before we start, if you guys find yourself coming back here often, please consider supporting the content through either PayPal or Patreon. That gives access to extra shows. My wife and I do a patron appreciation show at the end of each week. And as, I guess, new content comes down the pike, I try to keep an eye towards what I can kind of give just specifically to the patrons themselves. So, now that that's said, let's get to the news. I tried to do the story earlier today, but I was interrupted by a cell phone that failed me in regards to the amount of space that it had available. So, let's do the story now, and let's do the story right. Do you remember this woman? This is Maria Butina. The U.S. media has called this woman every name in the book but a child of God. She was a Russian agent, that she was a agent that was selling sex for influence, that she was kind of these like prostitutes in order to get information, essentially honeypots. Called her everything. Ultimately, what she got charged with was not registering as a foreign agent. None of the spy stuff, not registering as a foreign agent. She was prosecuted for this, put in prison for this, and she's going to be ejected out of the country for this. If we are being very honest, what she was really prosecuted for was just being a Russian. While in the United States, in a political climate of hysteria, that has pushed this notion that the President of the United States is somehow a Russian agent, and that he is being guided by Vladimir Putin. The reality of this is, but before we go to the main story, take a listen to this. Heads exploded when Bill Barr testified this. Now, the reality of it is, they're calling this woman a honeypot. The FBI, in actuality, used the honeypot to elicit information on Trump, or to get information on the Trump campaign. This is the second spy that was uncovered, that was sent into the Trump campaign on dubious pretenses. Dubious pretenses. Listen to this, because I have a point that I want to make, and I'll keep it rather concise. And just to prep this, Bill Barr is giving testimony here. Now, the point I want to make here is this. When Bill Barr alludes to this notion of spying on the Trump campaign, heads explode. But there was spying on the Trump campaign. Literally spying on the Trump campaign. We know that the FBI sent Stephen Halper to essentially elicit information on the campaign itself. While there, the New York Times broke a bombshell piece. I'm unsure if the Washington Post or CNN has run the story yet, but it is a bombshell piece that Halper had a woman with him, Astra Turk, that's not a real name, that was posing as a research assistant that was really an FBI agent. That research assistant that was really an FBI agent was making contact with Papadopoulos and was flirting with Papadopoulos. This is literally a honeypot. Was flirting with Papadopoulos. And in flirting with Papadopoulos was trying to elicit information. At one point asking him flat out, is the Trump campaign working with the Russians? And in another situation, having email exchanges with him where she says something like, I look forward to our future. What do you mean you look forward to our future? You're an FBI agent. Forward to what future? You're there literally to elicit information on the campaign. Why are you pretending as if there's some kind of romantic interest? But again, that's kind of the point, right? That's what a honeypot is. I've been somewhat cynical on this. Listen to Bill Barr, because I want to make a point.
On that team, why you felt a need to form that kind of a team, and what you intend to be the scope of their investigation.
Yeah, as I said in my confirmation hearing, I am going to be reviewing both the genesis and the conduct of intelligence activities directed at the Trump campaign during 2016. A lot of this has already been investigated, and a substantial portion of it has been investigated and is being investigated by the Office of Inspector General at the department. But one of the things I want to do is pull together all the information from the various investigations that have gone on, including on the Hill and in the department, and see if there are any remaining questions to be addressed.
And can you share with us why you feel a need to do that?
Well, for the same reason we're worried about foreign influence in elections. We want to make sure that during an election, I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal.
Right there. Right there. Yes, Bill Barr is right. Spying on a political campaign is a big deal. And you must understand this point. The intelligence services felt the need on a very, slim, extraordinarily slim, and at this point, not all that clear reasoning went through the FISA court with a dossier that was paid for by the opposition candidate, meaning in this case the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, and used that in order to spy on one of the political campaigns. Now, the dossier was salacious, and questions should be asked on how did all of this get to the point where they thought that this was sufficient enough to spy on a political campaign. We're told breathlessly, for 3 years, we've been inundated with a conspiracy theory that was shot down in the broad light of day. And after it was shot down in the broad light of day, they moved to obstruction, making this argument of, we didn't know, we had to check. We had to have due diligence to ensure that the president could be in control by a foreign agent. But here's the problem with that. 3 years. This country has been inundated with a conspiracy theory for 3 years. And if it is just as good to have due diligence in regards to ensuring that the president of the United States is not a foreign agent, it is also, and all of these people have to agree with me, just as valid to put due diligence into understanding how all of this took place, how they could all be so wrong. We've been inundated. The public discourse in this country, from the standpoint of media and from the standpoint of politics, has been ensconced in a narrative that was shown to be utter and entire fraud, a conspiracy theory. This conspiracy theory was used to spy on political campaigns. The organ, as it was spying, meaning the governmental organ, as it was spying on the political campaigns, was in charge of by one of the other political parties. If the roles were reversed, and this wasn't the Obama administration, this was a Bush administration looking at the Obama campaign, I guarantee you there will be a very different look in the way that people are regarding this. If nothing else, there needs to be a full and complete understanding on the reasonings that the intelligence community, how it came to the rationale to do this, whether or not the FISA court was given honest and fair, balanced information with regards to what it was presented in order to approve the warrant to spy on the Trump campaign in the first place. Like, there are a lot of questions associated with this. We're told by the likes of people like Sam Cedar, well, I mean, based on the information that you had at your disposal, would you have had an investigation of the Trump administration? But that's not really the question. I mean, we're under this kind of influence of a psyop of information that was dumped into the public for a bunch of people that had political motives, in some cases financial motives, and in other cases, people wanted to be statesmen, or at the very least considered themselves statesmen, and thought Donald Trump was a clear and present threat. I'm making the point that with all of these people, with all of these motives that are involved in this process that can instigate and propel something like this for 3 years, shouldn't we have a clear understanding on how it started? How did such a massive psyop get put on the American population in this way? And how? What was the genesis that allowed the spying on the presidency, or at the very least a campaign that was running for president of the United States? That is a big, big deal. And this is not me, raising up the intelligence community like the Democrat Party did, but you can't have it both ways. You can't say we must investigate possible leads into something nefarious going on with the Trump administration and associated with Russia. But when this is shot down in the light of day and found to be an entire conspiracy theory, to not investigate how the conspiracy theory started and whether they were nefarious or sinister motives of people involved in the instigation of this conspiracy theory. You can't have it both ways. Barr was vilified with this, but in this case, what Barr is saying is just a logical continuation. So I'll end this here, but basics of the story: Stephen Happer, spy, sent to spy on the Trump campaign, had a research assistant that was not a research assistant, but was an FBI agent going by the alias of Azra Turk, that was talking to Papadopoulos, sweetening him up, flirting with Papadopoulos. There's letters to attest to the fact, in order to try to elicit information about the Trump campaign. Are you okay with the intelligence services being used in this way? Whether by hook or by crook, whether they were being earnest, whether everybody in the process was sincere. And I got to be honest, I don't know why anybody would just kind of assume that everybody in the process was sincere when what's at stake is the presidency of the United States. And even more so with somebody who many of these people thought was roundly unqualified. Why so optimistic? Why so optimistic? Or why so naive, I should say. Yes, there should be an investigation. With all the exuberance that was put into this investigation with Trump and Russia, the same level of exuberance needs to be put and invested into figuring out how on earth did all of this start, and whether or not the motives of all of the people that were involved in the impetus of this were clean. You can't have it both ways. We must investigate the president because we have suspicion of something. Oh, it was a conspiracy theory. Let's just move on. No, you've embroiled us in 3 years. Yeah, let's figure out how it started. Let's figure out who were the leading actors in starting this and whether or not these people had clean hands, because there's, again, no reason to believe that they did. And by the way, I am not a Trump supporter in the least. You've heard me go after and vilify Trump one thing after the other, but one thing I do not like is this notion that political parties are using the instruments of the government itself to spy on one of the other campaigns. That bothers the shit out of me. Because, by the way, that could be one Bernie Sanders that they're doing the same thing to, or one Tulsi Gabbard, because these people are coming out saying they're going to be more conciliatory around the world, and they freak out about the perspective that the president take. Mind you, that president is taking a perspective that was put on by the voters that put him in that office. Trump also with this notion of being more conciliatory. Voters put him in there for that very specific reason, or at very least one of the very specific reasons. The notions that the intelligence community disagrees with that and take actions in that disagreement is disconcerting in the least. Yes, it should be investigated. I'll end this here. I don't want to keep this one long, and I gotta be honest, 15 minutes is kind of too long. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. This